Hello everyone, and welcome back to Pokemon Moon. I know we've just done Daily December recently, but come on man, I just want to play more of this game. And you know what would be something fun to play with? The box art legendaries. Today, we will be seeing how fast Lunala can beat Pokemon Moon in a solo run challenge. Let's get straight into the video. Earlier in the week, via a livestream, we played through the game with Solgaleo, and that Pokemon did so incredibly good, it ended up getting first place on the leaderboard. And the fact that for 2026, I now allow the use of Z Crystals, it did help outperform the Unova Dragons a lot. Although, next year, I will re-rank the original 7 Moon runs with Z Crystals and see how much better they can do. But let's not worry about that right now. We're going to be playing with Lunala today. Can it stand a chance against Solgaleo? I don't think so. And you may be wondering why I think that, because if we look at our stats are incredibly good. We have 137 HP and special attack. We have 113 attack, 89 defense, 109 special defense, and 97 speed. 97 speed is at that appropriate spot where if we give ourselves a plus speed nature and the bare minimum of 100 speed EVs, we will outspeed everything in the game. And it's a good thing too, because we are in the slow level up group. I think if we were in a better XP group like medium slow, maybe that 97 base speed could go a bit lower, but not worth worrying about right now. And of course, Solgaleo and Lunala have access to some very powerful moves, including a same type attack bonus signature move, which for Lunala is Moongeist Beam. But there's one problem though. It only gets it at level 1 and upon evolving from Cosmoem into Lunala, and since we're not evolving, that's out the window, so we'd have to get this move at level 1. But you know what the problem is? We have 5 level 1 moves, and due to the ordering, our moveset is going to be Cosmic Power, Hypnosis, Teleport, and Confusion, which I can definitely assure you is not a great moveset, especially for this game. If you know, you know. But if you don't know, please wait a couple of minutes. But afterwards we get Nightshade at level 7, then Confuse Ray, Air Slash, Shadow Ball, Moonlight, Night Daze, Magic Coat, Moonblast, Dream Eater, Phantom Force, Wide Guard, and Hyper Beam. If we take a quick look at our TM section, we get a huge array of coverage. We get all the ice moves, the electric moves, solar beam, psychic, shadow ball, aerial ace, focus blast, sky drop, acrobatics, shadow claw, fly, swagger, substitute, and dazzling gleam. And in terms of setup moves, we get 2 setup moves, work up and calm mind. We get work up as the very first TM in the entire game, and we will not get access to calm mind until we get to the Sea Folk village on Pawnee Island. But work up is going to be incredibly good, especially since we now allow Z crystals. We could equip the Normalium Z and use Z work up. That'll give us +2 attack and +1 special attack. Normally when you use a Z move based off of a setup move, it just functions like normal but gets rid of your negative stat debuffs, but work up for some reason has a little extra effect to it which will really benefit physical attackers. And if you notice on the overlay, I now have my held item, EVs, and calculated stats showing. I'm actually doing a window capture from PokeLink, which is the software I use on the side, in order to see what my stats are, EVs, my current HP, stuff like that. This will help a lot not only with the streams, but also with the voiceover and for you guys watching the videos as well, because at any time you can now see what my held item is, which is going to be super useful. And if you're noticing something, as soon as I finish the catching tutorial with Professor Kukui, I'm just randomly teleporting from wild Pokemon and spamming Confusion and Hypnosis. You may notice this, but our starting moveset is all psychic moves, and the very first trainer in the game is a youngster with an Alolan Rattata, which is completely immune to all of our psychic types, so we're gonna have to use Struggle. And Struggle is not a great move after Generation 4. No matter how much or how little damage we do, it'll always deal 1/4 of our max HP and recoil, so we have to make sure Struggle can do enough damage. But the good news is, after this guy right here, the only other mandatory dark type afterwards is the Alolan Grimer in the trainer school, but we'll have Nightshade for that guy. And you may be wondering why not have Nightshade for the Alolan Rattata? Well, Alolan Rattata is not a pure dark type like I thought. It's a normal dark type. so Nightshade will not work on it, so the Alolan Rattata we do have to use Struggle on, but for dark types afterwards we can use Nightshade. And as we continue grinding for Struggle, I'm going to quickly talk about our ability, Hidden Power Typing, and Nature. Our ability is Shadow Shield, which actually is a very interesting ability. When we're at full HP, the opponent's attacks do half damage to us. So if the opponent uses Dragon Rage, it's going to use 20 HP. Actually, I'm not sure if that's how it works because that's a fixed damage move, but you get what I'm trying to say. When we're no longer at full HP, all damage will calculate like normal. So it'll greatly benefit if the opponent uses a ghost type move on us while we're at full HP, we can survive another turn. And once we do finally get past the Rattata, we can make our way to the trainer school and have Nightshade for the Alolan Grimer to take care of it pretty easily. But once we're done here, you may notice another problem. Since Nightshade does not work on Alolan Rattata, that means we can be for certain it will not work on the Totem Alolan Raticate in the Verdant Cavern. This is going to be a massive disadvantage for Lunala being in its own game, Pokemon Moon. Since we cannot use Nightshade on it, we would have to use Struggle, but does anyone seriously believe that we can knock out that Raticate in 4 struggles, especially since it's going to summon a Rattata helper? Yeah, I don't think so, which means before we can confidently be ready to fight the Alolan Raticate, we're gonna need level 19. Yeah, level 19 when we finally get Air Slash. You may wonder why not use Confuse Ray. The reason that will not work is because starting Generation 7, the chance to hit yourself in Confusion is 30% instead of 50%, so it's really not going to be that reliable. Plus, the Alolan Raticate gets a defense boost, so that makes that strat even worse. So I'm going to have to do a lot of training. But where will I do the training, you may ask? Well, it's going to be a part of the game that almost no one goes to. It is going to be the Hau'oli Cemetery. There is nothing really that useful here unless you want the TM for Confide. But the reason I'm here is because since I am playing at nighttime, which is very specific for this run, there are going to be a bunch of Ghastly here I can knock out, and the Ghastly gives special attack EVs, and the Zubat that are here give speed. The random Mischievous that I'll encounter now and then gives special defense. Not that really that big of a deal. But my justification for coming here is that Ghastly gives surprisingly good experience yields, and if I have to get to 19 anyway, I may as well get some useful EVs while I'm at it. And if you're wondering why I need special attack EVs, besides the fact that I'm obviously a special attacker, I did a lot of the ranges for the final fights in the game in Kingler Calc before even starting this run, and you see, I am going to need 252 special attack EVs. Not because it makes things easier, which it honestly does, it's also because there are a lot of fights earlier than that where, because of the lack of XP from trainers and will be a lower level, we really need to make up for our lack of levels in our stats. So grinding on the Ghastly while I'm here is going to be a great idea. You may also wonder why not do SOS training on the Ghastly so it can spawn in another Ghastly. First of all, their call rates are not as great as Psyduck, which is actually the best Pokemon to SOS train on for special attack, and the location of Psyduck is in Brookett Hill on the next island. That is the location of the water trial. Oh wait, hold on, wait a minute. I forgot to talk about our hidden power typing in Nature. Our Nature is Timid for extra speed and less attack, and our hidden power typing is Hidden Power Fighting. The reason we need Hidden Power Fighting is because we need a solution for Nanu, the 3rd Kahuna fight on Ula Ula Island. And there is no way we're going to be at level 47 for Moonblast for that fight. That is a very high level for the slow group to get without using candies. By the time I get to level 19 and learn Air Slash, I have 55 special attack EVs and 45 speed EVs. I do have 25 special defense, but it's not like that's really going to matter. But at this point, since we're very over leveled, I'm not even going to play an intro for the Alolan Raticate. What I'm going to start doing for these Sun and Moon videos, I base this off of a commenter on a previous Sun and Moon video for Daily December. I am only going to play the intros for the totem fights that actually cause resets or blackouts. If I first try them, I won't play the intro. But yeah, you can see just Air Slash just completely destroys the Raticate. It doesn't do enough to KO it, but that's fine though, because since the Rattata has been summoned, it turns this fight into an SOS fight. And during an SOS fight, you gain double the EVs. So when I defeat the Raticate and the Rattata, I get 6 speed EVs. Not bad. And like I said, as long as we get to 100 speed EVs with our plus speed nature, we can outspeed pretty much everything in the game starting at level 60. And I'm sure I won't need to play an intro for this holo fight because yeah, Air Slash just one-shots everything here. And once we unlock the ability to ride on Tauros, I can go ahead and enter the 10 carat hill and get myself the TM for acrobatics. I could have gotten the expert belt as well, but I actually skipped it by accident. Whoops. But anyway, now we are on Akala Island. There are 4 major fights here. There's the water trial, which is absolutely pathetic, the fire trial, which I also like to call the poison trial, and the grass trial, and the kahuna fight with Olivia. After I defeat the rival in Paniola Town, this is normally the point where I can do some EV training for either attack or special attack. However though, the main problem with playing a legendary is that our stats are too powerful. It's very hard to reliably get the Psyduck or the Pikipeks to low health and allow them to infinitely spam SOS calling. This is why I'm upset neither Solgaleo or Lunala got access to False Swipe, because having access to the False Swipe TM allows for SOS training to be incredibly fast and incredibly consistent. But so far, the only Pokemon I've played that gets that move is Decidueye. And in the new year for next year, I need to re-rank Decidueye where I allow the use of Z Crystals. Once I get to Brookett Hill though, after defeating Gladion, I do try my best to SOS train on Psyduck as much as possible. I do have Nightshade at least, which is going to be very useful for getting the Psyduck to low HP. As long as I get it to low HP, Psyduck will have a 75% chance of calling for help. Sadly enough, as I get higher and higher in level from SOS training on these Psyduck, I end up just completely one-shotting them no matter what. But then I actually thought of a pretty clever loophole. I will actually have acrobatics while holding the Silk Scarf. I'm not trying to boost acrobatics, I'm trying to nerf acrobatics. This way, acrobatics only does 55 power, which depending on the defense EVs of the Psyduck, which might allow the Psyduck to survive. And this does allow me to continue the SOS training. You may think that all this EV training is a huge waste of time, but for those of you who think that EV training is a waste of time in this game, I dare you to go back and watch the Simisear live stream I did last week. I did that run without any pre-planning, just as an experiment, and you guys need to watch that. I continue training on Psyduck via SOS, and then once I get too powerful, just knocking them out one by one. I continue this until I get to a grand total of 226 special attack EVs. Hopefully I gain the rest of them naturally throughout the playthrough, and if I end up a little short, I can just get some EV reducing berries and help myself get to that number. But for right now, we're a pretty decently high level. Why don't we go ahead and take out the water trial? No intro needed for this thing because Wishy-Washy's pretty frickin' bad. It does get a defense boost, which is why I'm going to go for Air Slash, and all this thing does is set off a growl. So yeah, after I use a second Air Slash, it is enough to 2-hit, and then I can 1-hit the Alomomola, or as Shadow Stitch Plays likes to call it, the Fat Fish. Alrighty, fire trial time. There's really nothing eventful from the water trial to the fire trial. I always go in the Thrifty Megamart to buy a bunch of repels as well as get the rest TM. I essentially do that every single run at this point. And one thing I would like to mention for the fire trial, for the very first puzzle where you have to solve which Marowak does the dance differently, if you purposefully answer the left Marowak by spamming the A button, you can rematch it over and over again for some great experience and defense EVs, which is actually far more efficient than SOS training on Cubone or Bonsly, especially since Cubone can spawn Kangaskhan. But I actually decided not to do any of that today and just start the Salazzle fight. I start off the Salazzle fight by using Shadow Ball to get its HP to about half. It doesn't look like it's going to two-shot, but surprisingly it does. Then I can Shadow Ball the Salandit and destroy it in one try. You know what's funny? I went into this fight at half HP because the Hiker and the first Marowak did a bunch of damage to me, so I wasn't able to completely heal, and therefore Shadow Shield couldn't save me. But it's not like it really mattered. And also, I haven't really had a need for my held item slot. I've been still holding onto the Silk Scarf for quite a while, even though I don't have any normal type moves. But next up is going to be the Grass Trial against the Lurantis. I'm going to have Air Slash for this thing, so it's going to be an absolute joke. Let's see if I'm correct. And I am correct. The first Air Slash did leave the Lurantis at red HP, and it is able to heal up a little bit with Synthesis, but that's fine though. I can just use another Air Slash and quickly finish it off. Funnily enough, the cast form ends up doing the most damage to me. So yeah, with all of the island trials on Akala Island finished, guess what? We went through all of them with no resets or blackouts. If you're wondering where my first blackout was, it was during the SOS training on Psyduck. When you're fighting a bunch of Pokemon via SOS and you're about to die, do not run away. You lose all of your EVs. You keep the EVs whether you win or you black out. But right now, coming up, is going to be the Kahuna fight against Olivia. Normally, having the TM for rest is a pretty good solution for her because she'll lead off with a Nose Pass that likes to use Thunder Wave. Plus, you can get a Chesto Berry from one of the various berry trees in the Alola region. However though, not every berry tree can spawn Chesto Berries. The only berry trees you'll have access to that can have Chesto Berries are the ones on Route 2 and Route 3 on Melee Island, and then on Akala Island, Route 8. That is the route right before the Lush Jungle. Before I challenge the Kahuna Olivia, I'm gonna equip the Spell Tag that boosts the power of Ghost-type moves by 20%. You can get this item on your way to her, and my moveset is going to be Air Slash, Work Up, Rest, and Shadow Ball. So let's go ahead and get started with the fight. I start off by using one Air Slash to break the Sturdy, and then I try to switch to Shadow Ball, but she ends up switching into Lycanroc. She sometimes randomly switches out of Nose Pass to her Lycanroc with various Pokemon. I have no idea why. I can knock out the Lycanroc, the Nose Pass when it comes back out, and then I can knock out the Bulldor. And funnily enough, I did not end up needing rest at all, which was super helpful. However though, having an Olivia split of 1 hour 22 minutes, that is very, very bad. The Alolan Raticate split definitely held me back a lot. And yes, I did have to do SOS training that ended up needing to be necessary for the final 7 fights. Still, that is not a great split. For a comparison, Solgaleo actually beat the Olivia fight at about 50 minutes on the clock, which is insane, because Solgaleo actually did not need to do SOS training. I could get all of the EVs that I needed through vitamins. If you're ever planning for the final 7 or 8 fights in Sun and Moon, if you only need around like 120 EVs, maybe 130 at most, you can get the EVs that you need through vitamins. But if you need at least like 170 plus, you're gonna have to do some form of SOS training, even with vitamins. Now we can have that tour of the Aether Foundation, chase away the Nihilego, as well as get the TM for Psychic for our efforts. And then next up, we gotta go to Ula Ula Island. The How fight, as soon as you get off the boat, is incredibly terrifying because of that Raichu. But like I always say in my Sun and Moon videos, you are not required to win against any of the How fights, except for the very last one on top of Mount Lanakia. However though, I actually do win this fight because Alolan Raichu is part Psychic, so it's weak to Ghost. So that's nice. And now that we're on Ula Ula Island, there are 3 major events here. We gotta do the Electric Trial, the very terrifying Ghost-type trial, as well as the Kahuna fight against Nanu. You might consider the battle against Guzma to be difficult, and you may as well consider that to be an event, but you can get a TM on Akala Island to completely nerf that guy. In the Hiya City Pokemon Center, you can actually purchase the TM for Protect, and you can just use Protect on the Golisopod to block First Impression, and then afterwards, the only thing you really have to fear is Swords Dance Razor Shell. On Route 10, just before getting to the top of Mount Hakanali, I stop at this berry tree. This is the tree that gives the EV reducing berries. I end up getting 2 tomato berries here. These lower your EVs and your speed stat. I do decide to use these berries because speed isn't too important for Lunala, although it wasn't the best idea. The main reason I did was because I'm only at 230 special attack EVs, and I am starting to approach the EV limit, so I just use those berries to give myself just a little bit more room. Anyway, we can clear out the Mullane fight in front of the observatory because Steel doesn't resist Ghost anymore, and then we can head inside and take on the Totem Vikavolt. I'm not really too worried about this fight because we will have a super effective Air Slash, and on the very first turn, I actually go for a workup, then go for Shadow Ball? Okay, that was definitely not the right play, but who knows, maybe it was, because Vikavolt is an electric bug type, so it would be neutral, so honestly, Shadow Ball was probably the right call. And then with the Vikavolt defeated, this Charjabug stays alive for so long. This Charjabug just spams String Shot and Mud Slap just to piss you off. Honestly, I really wish I had Aerial Ace at this point. But eventually, in no time at all, I am able to knock out the Charjabug, although it is becoming very annoying. I end up having to use Rest at one point just to get rid of Paralysis. I didn't mention this either, but one thing that can actually make the Vikavolt hard is because sometimes it can use Charge to make its Spark do double damage, but it's not just that, it'll also give it +1 to its special defense for 1 turn, and that is a huge disadvantage for special attackers obviously. Alright guys, Ghost Trial time. It's so unfortunate we don't start with Moongeist Beam, because Moongeist Beam and Sunsteel Strike for the Solgaleo and Lunala, those moves actually ignore the target's abilities, and from what I've heard, they even outrank abilities like Mold Breaker. I'm not 100% sure, this is just what I've been told by people in my Discord server, so you may have to fact check me on that. But if we started with Moongeist Beam, or if the move relearner was earlier than Mount Lanikia, I could just use Moongeist Beam to one-shot and ignore the disguise. But sadly, I cannot do that, so we're just gonna have to see how this fight turns out with what we got. I go for Shadow Ball on the Mimikyu to break its disguise, and it does hit me with a 4x super effective Shadow Claw, and it does a lot of damage. And because of that, the Haunter that comes out is able to destroy me with Sucker Punch, giving me my very first reset. Okay, I think I know how I need to win this. The Mimikyu does have the move Mimic. If it uses it turn 1, it'll essentially waste its turn, and that might allow me to one-shot the Mimikyu with Shadow Ball. I just need to keep resetting here until I get that to happen. After getting a grand total of 12 resets to this fight, I'm like, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out right now. So I actually do something interesting. I'm actually going to walk out of the trial and just leave. Because I am going to go back to the trainer school on Melee Island and get myself the Quick Claw. I should have gotten this earlier, because I think with the Quick Claw, if I can get the Quick Claw activation on the very first turn, I can break the disguise right away without it damaging me. Plus, I have no way to boost my speed during this fight. It's not like with Solgaleo where I got access to Flame Charge. And something else I found out, if you leave the trial site and come back, you have to fight the Ghastly Haunter and the Gengar over again. And this actually made me realize something. These all give special attack EVs, the grand total of 6. And since I'm so close to maxing out, this might be a great way of getting my last minute special attack EVs to make sure I get to 252. I end up deciding not to do that right now because when I get back to the Mimikyu, I have 248 special attack EVs, I just need 4 more. Not that big a deal. But something I actually decided to do is after I end up losing to the Mimikyu yet again, I decide to just take the Blackout instead, so that way I can fight the Ghastly Haunter and Gengar again. But when I came back in, they weren't there. I think you have to actually quit in order to rematch them. I'll remember that for next time. But anyway, now it's back to getting attempts on the Mimikyu. On my very first attempt coming back in after the Blackout, I do get the Quick Claw on the Mimikyu to break its disguise, but it actually does not matter whether I get the Quick Claw on turn 1 or not. I think the important Quick Claw is the one on turn 2 after the disguise is already broken. After getting a few more losses to the Mimikyu, I actually quit the trial and then fight the ghosts again to max out my special attack EVs, just so I can do it while I'm here. And do you guys want to know how frickin' close I was to the EV cap? Watch this. When I defeat this Gengar right here, Gengar gives 3 special attack EVs. So you expect my EV count to go from 251 to 254? No, it does not. It actually goes to 252. Meaning I was 1 EV away from the threshold, and I barely made it. I was that frickin' close to not being able to max out. But it is a great thing I did, and it made using those tomato berries to reduce my speed EVs 100% worth it. Before I finally go back to doing more Mimikyu attempts, I decide to go around Ula Island, just talk to everybody I find. I'm gonna need to just fight more of these trainers that I skipped. I almost never fight these trainers. I just did not expect the Mimikyu to be that frickin' hard. I mean, I should have expected it. I'm 4 times weak to the thing. The last time I ran with something that was 4 times weak to Ghost was when I played Hoopa in Pokemon X and Y last year, as a live stream. I'm going to go ahead and just skip to the final attempt at Mimikyu where I actually win. I am at 22 resets overall into the run. I now have Night Daze on my moveset, and something I didn't realize was that Night Daze has the chance to lower accuracy, and this ended up being the difference because of Mimikyu missing a very crucial Shadow Claw, and because of that, I can knock out the Mimikyu with Shadow Ball, and then knock out the Haunter with Shadow Ball as well. And this fight came very close as well. I got flinched by Astonish in this fight and I still won. This was freaking brutal. But on the bright side, we're finally done. And with how freaking bad that Mimikyu fight was, I think the fight against Guzma and Nanu are going to be far easier in comparison. But before I enter Po Town, I have to do a double battle against these Team Skullgrunts, and you're required to have a second Pokemon. So I go ahead and send out a shiny Psyduck. Yeah, I didn't mention this to keep it a surprise from you. I actually found a shiny while doing SOS training, which is actually how you're supposed to get shinies in Gen 7. I was gonna do a run with this for fun, but I actually forgot to save the Pokemon through PK Hex. So yeah, that shiny's lost. Oh well, I do not want to play with a first stage anyway, even if I am allowed to evolve. Anyway though, just as I predicted, none of the Team Skullgrunts nor Guzma provide any problems, so now we just gotta go take on Nanu. I actually have a very unique strat for this. I didn't come up with it on my own. Some people in my Discord server helped me come up with this. I'm going to enter this fight holding the Adrenaline Orb. People think of this item as being used to help with SOS chaining, but no, it doesn't. That's one of its effects, but it has another effect where if I get intimidated from the Krokorok, I get a speed boost. This will help me outspeed the Persian, so then I can go ahead and knock out the Krokorok with Hidden Power Fighting, as well as the Persian with Hidden Power Fighting. This was the reason I wanted Hidden Power Fighting. I mean, Hidden Power Bug also could have worked. You may think Hidden Power Fairy, but Hidden Power Fairy doesn't exist. This did take a couple of tries though, but just like I predicted, Nanu is far easier in comparison to how that freaking Mimikyu fight went. And now at this point, we've got to go take on the Aether Foundation, got to take on Guzma again, then we got to go take on Lusamine for the first time. You're not required to win that first Lusamine fight, but it's very good experience if you are able to win. I do get a reset while fighting the Aether Foundation employees, but at the same time, what can you expect with this thing at this point with how many frickin' resets I have? Almost all of them being on the Mimikyu. But at least I do first try the Lusamine fight, so that's great. And with Lusamine defeated, we can now head our way to Pawnee Island. I fight all of the trainers in the Pawnee Plains for some much needed experience because since we are in the slow level up group, I want to save all my rare candies right before the league. And while we are on Executor Island, I can actually pick up a hidden heart scale right here. I'm going to use this on top of Mount Lanakia to get Moongeist Beam for the Elite Four. I really wish I could have had that for Mimikyu. I would have first tried Mimikyu if I had access to it, damn it. And now we have one final Kahuna fight. We are going to go take on Hapu. We're going to have the moveset Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, Solar Beam, and Moon Blast, and we're going to hold the Expert Belt. I did go back to Melee to go ahead and pick this up. The main plan is to use one Focus Blast on the Dugtrio for the one-shot. Then on the Mudstale, I am going to have to use Solar Beam. It is going to go for its Z move, which ends up killing me. Okay, I should have thought of that. There is a very simple solution to this that I didn't think of at the time. What I should have done was instead of Expert Belt, hold the Gracium Z. This will turn Solar Beam into Bloom Doom, which is a one-turn move, and it will be enough to knock out the Mudstale. That is actually the strategy I did for Solgaleo, but Lunala was played first. I do end up figuring this out though later, and I'm able to just go ahead and finish her off as soon as I realize this. Was this my first Z move this entire run? I think it was. I honestly probably should have utilized the Z crystals a lot more though, especially Z Workup. I get it, Z Workup tends to benefit physical attackers more, but still, I could have thought of some other options. I do get a couple of blackouts in the Pawnee Canyon while fighting the trainers, but I don't get any resets. Then on the Komodo fight, I do have Moonblast. I decided to try equipping the Fairyum Z to try and knock out the Komodo with the Fairy type Z move, but it actually didn't end up working, so I think I just wasted my time with that. Oh well. This is the official start of the final 8 trainers. We got to go take on the second Lucamine fight, the final Gladion fight, the final How fight, as well as the Elite Four in Professor Kukui. Starting off right away on the Clefable, it has a special defense boost, and the thing likes to spam Cosmic Power, and it has Moonlight, which you can obviously tell is a huge problem for special attackers because it turns this Clefable into an unmovable object. And funnily enough, during this fight, the Clefable actually metronomes grassy terrain, so it ends up slowly healing each turn, so this is going to make the bulkiness even worse. But do you know how I end up winning? It actually metronomed self-destruct. It got rid of all of its defense boosts, and it did 0 damage to me, and it one-shot itself. I even looked at my summary screen to see if that was Memento or something. No, it wasn't Memento. It literally metronomed self-destruct. Okay, that was freaking hilarious, and because of that misplay from her, I'm able to take out the rest of her team. Final 7 trainers now. Next up, we gotta go take on Gladion. This is the only Gladion fight you're required to win. Since the move Z Workup isn't going to benefit us at all, I decide instead of using Workup, I'm going to be using Calm Mind to gain some defensive boosts as well. And with access to the Expert Bell, I should be able to sweep his entire team, but surprisingly, the Silvally actually outsped me, but just barely. I have 151 speed, and the Silvally has 154 speed. Yeah, even though using those 2 Tomato Berries got me enough EV usage to get my maxed out special attack, I probably should have reset for some different EV berries, like defense, special defense, maybe attack. And because of that, I didn't end up having enough speed. But you know what though, it is almost time we used rare candies anyway. I go around the region getting a couple of rare candies that I have to backtrack for, and I go to this new place, the Lake of the Sun, or the Lake of the Moon if you're playing Pokemon Moon. I can go here and get the TM for Psyshock. This will have one use coming up later. After getting another reset or 2, I realized I need to use my rare candies right now, so I use all of my candies to get to level 67, which is actually going to be mandatory. This was my minimum level at the start of the league, so I could get 68 for Professor Kukui. And the main gist is pretty simple. Set up a couple of Calm Minds and sweep with either Psyshock or Moonblast. And if you look at my calculated stats in the bottom right, my speed stat is 183. That is not the best because Kukui's Lycanroc has 186 speed. I do not think I'll be able to outspeed that thing, especially since it has Crunch. That might be an issue. Once we get to the top of Mount Lanikia, I can enter the Pokemon Center, give this lady a Heart Scale, and get the move Moongeist Beam taught in the place of Shadow Ball. And since Moongeist Beam only has 5 PP, I can pick up the nearby PP Max to fix this problem. Then on How, I can use one Calm Mind, then one-shot the Alolan Raichu with Moongeist Beam. Then next up is the Kamala. It hits me with a very powerful Sucker Punch. And then next up is the Flareon. I switch over to Psyshock for the one hit, and then Primarina, I switch to Moongeist Beam. You know, that could have been pretty dang close, but at least I won. And now, we've got to go take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. I'm sure this won't come as a shock to some of you, but Acerola is my first choice here. She leads off with her Sableye. I'm going into this fight with the Wide Lens. Wide Lens is not going to be useful here, but I have Focus Blast on the moveset as well, and having the Wide Lens will make Focus Blast 77% accurate. You may be wondering where I got this. After you beat Nanu, go back to the professor's house. There's a lady next to some Corsola on the beach. You talk to her to get the item. But during that time I mentioned that Acerola's team is already finished. Next up is the Rock-type Elite Four member, Olivia. She leads off with Relicanth. I go ahead and use one Calm Mind as she sets up Yawn. That's fine though, I can wake up very quickly. Then the Lycanroc comes out, it hits me with 2 crunches doing massive damage, and I end up staying asleep for far too long and get knocked out with a 3rd crunch. You know what though, I will accept that. Do you know why? That blackout will allow me to get enough experience to make sure by the time I get to Professor Kukui, I will outspeed his Lycanroc. I will have to beat Acerola again, but she's very easy. Alright, back to Olivia. I do have the Chesto Berry equipped instead of the Wide Lens, so I'm just going to have to accept a little bit of luck. But that's fine though, I can just use Moongeist Beam if I need to. And I should have used Moongeist Beam on the Probo Pass, because at the time, I actually forgot Moongeist Beam ignores Sturdy, but I don't think Moongeist Beam would have one-shot anyway. That Probo Pass is extremely defensive. Plus, if the Sandstorm is up, all of her rock types get a special defense boost. But that's one of the great things about Psyshock here. It uses the opponent's defense stat, but my special attack stat, so it will actually ignore the special defense boost. But I didn't think of that at the time. Next up is the Flying type Elite Four member, Kahili. I'm back to the Wide Lens now. I'm going to set up a couple of Calm Minds on the Skarmory. I'm going to try and set up to where I think Moongeist Beam will one-shot, and it does after only one Calm Mind. Then on the Mandibuzz, I end up using Focus Blast and it barely lives. Then I decide to go for another Calm Mind, and then while I use the Calm Mind, Lunala almost gets one-shot by that thing. But fortunately, I don't. Then I can knock out the Toucannon with Focus Blast, and then I try and go for Psyshock on the Crobat, but the Crobat outspeeds me because it has 190 speed. I am able to win on the second attempt, however. Next up is the Fighting type Elite Four member, Hala. He leads off with Hariyama. I go ahead and use one Calm Mind, as it goes for knockoff, doing a lot of damage. It does get a damage bonus because it knocked off my Wide Lens, but Shadow Shield does cut that damage in half. I could have easily prevented that by equipping a Z Crystal or something like that, because Z Crystals cannot be knocked off, so knockoff will not get a damage buff from it. But that's fine though, it's not like it really mattered. And now with the Elite Four defeated, we have one person remaining. We've got to go take on Professor Kukui and finish this run. He leads off with his Lycanroc. I do barely outspeed it in one shot with Focus Blast. I'm going to have to Focus Blast the Incineroar as well. Next up is the Snorlax. I go for another Focus Blast, then a fourth one. I miss, but then my fifth one knocks it out. That's fine though, I only needed Focus Blast for those Pokemon anyway. Then on the Braviary, Psyshock doesn't end up doing that great of damage because I did not do any setup here. And because of that, it ends up living, using Tailwind, and the Ninetales is able to outspeed and knock me out with Blizzard. Looking back at this run, I think instead of the Wide Lens, what I should have done was actually equip the Fightium Z Crystal and actually use All Out Plummeting on the Snorlax, so I wouldn't have had to use 2 Focus Blasts on it. But it doesn't end up mattering though. I am able to knock out the Ninetales and finally finish the run after I kill the Magnezone with Moongeist Beam. I clock in with a real time of 3 hours, 2 minutes, and 21 seconds, with 31 resets, 11 blackouts at level 70, with a game time after the long ass credits of 11 hours and 38 minutes. Yeah, this Pokemon, despite being a legendary, performed extremely badly. Having a 4 times weakness to Ghost and Dark was absolutely insane. If this thing had access to Moongeist Beam at level 1, I would have first tried Mimikyu, and I wouldn't have had any problems there. But I can definitely see a few points in this run where having a Z Crystal definitely would have been beneficial, especially the Ghost type Z Crystal, because during the Solgaleo stream, I used the Steelium Z a lot. And if we take a look at the leaderboard, out of the 11 runs I've done, Lunala got 9th place, it only beat out Simisear and Decidueye, and Simisear was completely blind. I hope that just shows you just how bad Ghost and Psychic types are in Sun and Moon, and the fact that this thing combines both of them is insane. And Solgaleo is in first place. Even though it had the Psychic typing, which overall didn't help it because it still had the Ghost weakness, having access to very early good moves, like for example level 7 Iron Head, is just absolutely insane. I was able to use my Steel type Z move during the Mimikyu fight to make that very easy. And I will say, so far, I've been really enjoying the Sun and Moon runs a lot. And for those of you who don't know, I've been doing a random Pokemon Moon solo run stream every Friday. I'm going to try and do it every Friday for the entire year, so I can get a lot more Pokemon Moon runs under my belt since I just started the series. And it's obviously going to take a lot more runs to get good at. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to follow me on my socials or support the channel through YouTube memberships. YouTube members get access to the patch files for all the Mega Evolution backports we do on stream, as well as members-only videos such as unedited runs, as well as re-ranks of previous Pokemon that I stream in my Discord server. But yeah, later in the day, I'll actually be doing Pokemon Moon with Porygon, regular Porygon. I'm only doing this because it's a member-suggested run. Becoming a YouTube member also does give you priority with run requests. It's going to be very awful to do that thing, but I think I can do it. But anyway, next week we're actually going to be doing Pokemon Sapphire. We'll be doing the games with Solrock and Lunatone. Thank you all for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.